It'll make beer, huh? If you're serious, come here. Building brewing careers. It'll make beer. It'll make beer, huh? Yeah, you know it's premier. Malt, hops, yeast in a tank. It'll make beer. Walk in the room, process lock. That's so clean. Whole tank shot, mash turn hot. Kettle on boil. Yes, do the magic. Pressure and toil. No shortcuts, I don't play fair. Quality first, that's why I'm rare. You want results, then listen clear. This how you build a brewing career. Helping brewers grow. That's power. Level up, game hour by hour. From first small batch to scaling up. Turn that draft into bad stuff. It'll make beer, huh? If you serious, come here. Building brewing careers. It'll make beer. It'll make beer. Yeah, you know it's premier. Malt, hops, yeast in the tank. It'll make beer. Track every number, don't it shake. Temp control, I finesse that bitch. Firming clean, shit seal tight. Pretty package, shit tastes right. You want craft, baby, I deliver. Every batch get bigger and bigger. From grain to glass, I pull that trigger. That's how you dominate those figures. Malt, hops, yeast, can't eat gluten, but he feasts. He's Mr. Whole Show. Check his game, feel his flow. You a weak tag ho, say his name, I told you so. Who make beer? It'll make beer. Who a real bad bitch? It'll make beer. Say it loud. It'll make beer, beer. It'll make beer. He's up in the club. It'll make beer. All the time he's sipping bub. It'll make beer. Stacking paper, make it rain. It'll make beer. Get a ticket for this train. It'll make beer. It'll make beer, 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 beer. It'll make beer.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a fine Thursday night. If you're joining us live, welcome to everybody in the chat. I see some familiar names out there in the chat. Good to see everybody. I might say this a couple times, but I'll say this right now. Oh, you can't hear me? Oh my gosh, that's September and June. Listen, dude. This is an old thing where I used to be like, oh, hey, let me know if you can hear me when I went live. And September and June is one of the OGs of the channel, okay? And longtime supporter. I love him to the depths of my heart. And then he's like, dude, I can't hear you. And then it made me nervous. But good to see everybody in the chat. Welcome in, welcome in. Let me know what is good happening in the brewery on your side. It's an AMA podcast. Little Adam Makes Beer. Ask me anything. We'll talk about all sorts of stuff today, people. We got a wide range of things pre-planned. I had some questions coming in over the gram. I don't think I got anything on Facebook. Maybe some YouTube stuff. So we'll be dipping into all that stuff today. Ladies and gentlemen, it's getting hot in the brewery. We're dialing up the intensity. I don't know where you guys are all at as far as production intensity for this time of year, but we're definitely ratcheting it up over at old 50 West. Things have been good. We got another set of hands in the brewery, which has been a blessing. We needed it. We were running a little bit lean, so good to get that additional help in there. And I don't know, just kind of doing the whole thing. I got an email today from some folks. Was it Sarah Haggerty at BSG? And there's a meetup in Pittsburgh. Yeah, Sarah Haggerty from the Raw BSG, and they're doing an education day over at Dancing Gnome, located in Pittsburgh, PA. Some YCH experimental beers from Dancing Gnome, ensuring quality through hop sensory methodology, sustainability and brewing efficiencies to reduce COGS and your carbon footprint, maximizing liquid hop aroma with hedonic sensory exercise. Oh, yes. Were you hoping for hedonic sensory exercises? I was. I'm going to make sure to stretch, though, boy. I'm going to go in there limber for that. Because there's one other time that I had involved myself in some hedonic exercises. And yeah, I needed to stretch ahead of time. So I would recommend that. What's in my hand, September? It is a tri-clamp that belongs to a brewer that I used to work for. It's one of those deals where you work all day, you come home, you go to empty your pockets, and you find something that has that's made its way home from the brewery, and then it just never makes its way back. So this is what I mess around with when I stream usually. Paint Boy, good to see you in there, brother. Hope everything's well up there. Good to see the Instagram chat stacking. Make sure to drop questions, comments, topics, anything like that in there. Yeah, that is literally bringing work home with me, September. That's how dedicated I am. But we got a lot to get to today. We're gonna be digging into it. But hey, shoot me a DM. Anybody that's out in that Pittsburgh area, any listeners that might be going to that event. I might do like a crazy, like leave my house at 4 a.m. thing and drive out there, and then just drive back afterwards. We'll see. I'll have to figure it out with work too, but that might be something that I'm looking at doing. So any of my PA people, we got some PA people out there. So let me know if you're going to that. I might be looking to do that. This is episode 106 of the Adam Makes Beer AMA podcast. Good to see you all in here. Good to see you all in here. We got all sorts of stuff coming up. I've got a question from September and June that we're going to be digging into. We're going to be talking about propping up yeast for your, I don't know, propagation needs. Anytime you need to grow up that pitch a little bit, boost that pitch up a little bit for something, either something higher gravity, maybe something on the lager side where you're going to need a larger density of yeast, more yeast cells. I will say this though, my Instagram stream looks like it's not working. It looks like it's frozen. So if anybody's over on Instagram and wants to comment whether or not I am actually still live there, I see myself smiling and pointing up in the air. So I don't know if I'm frozen over there or not. But anyways, hopefully not, because I'd like to have the interaction with the Instagram folks as well. So plenty of good stuff coming up. And we're going to hit a range. We're going to hit a range. We're gonna. There's some tools that I'm gonna point you to today. A website that's a little bit of a throwback for me. That's kind of getting a little bit of a rebirth, if you will. What else? Oh, good. I appreciate it. I don't know why my play of it doesn't look right, but I'll just have to live with it. So I have a website tool that I'm going to point you to. We're going to talk about hard times in the brewery, struggle, and kind of dealing with that, growing through that. We're going to dig into some stuff like that. I had some listener questions come up the other day on Instagram. You know, it's funny if I make a reel on Instagram for announcing a live stream or something, it gets very little. It gets very it disseminates very poorly. I get very little interaction with it. But because I don't know how to use my phone or Instagram, if I take a picture of like the palm of my hand, so it's just a black screen, and then I type on that picture, just like plain text, and I turn it into like multiple slides. Hey, do you have any problems in the brewery? I'm doing a live stream, and then I get tons of interaction. Usually interaction I thought was going to be driven by reels, but just standard post popped off. So Curtis, good to see you in the chat. In the north of Canada, you're coming in 5 out of 5. I love to hear that, dude. Where are you a brewer? Let me know where you're brewing. Way up there, the Great White North. I believe that would count as the Great White North, right, Curtis? I would count it as Great White North. So yeah, we got all sorts of goodies. But as always, make sure to be dropping questions, topics in the chat. Also, you just let me know how your week's been going in the brewery, what you've been working on, and things like that. Always interested for those goodies. A couple of things in Adam Makes Beer news. Check out the website, all the goodies over there. And I'll start off news by saying this. I've been saying to my wife, I personally am struggling right now from, especially from an energy standpoint. And I don't know if this is just because like I'm getting older and older, but I used to be able to like work at the brewery all day and then come home and edit video and post stuff and do things. I just haven't had the juice for it, man. I've just really been knocked out after work. And personally, it's frustrating for me because I have been doing more planning in preparation for the fundamentals course that I am going to be releasing, with my goal being my birthday of August 3rd. I want to have this course set up. It's going to be a 3-part course, which is free for brewers. It would be a brewery fundamental series, a leadership fundamentals, and a career development fundamentals. And I want to have that stuff done by my birthday, just because it's just an arbitrary goal, but you know, I want to have that done. The goal of the course is to give people free visual resources of how to accomplish different things in the brewery. You can build SOPs off of it. You can help train your staff. You can get a better understanding if you're looking at things from the homebrew side, a little bit more insight into the pro side of things. There's a wide range of things you can do with it. But I've been so frustrated with myself because every time I want to be able to do those things, it doesn't work out. I've just really been tired. And there's been a lot of change at the house. My wife has been working from home now, which is awesome. Obviously, from a financial standpoint, you know, work is good. Work helps pay bills. So that stuff's all good. But I don't know, just a lot of change. Everything is good, but it's a lot of change. But I'm trying to refocus. So this is how I'm talking myself through it. So if we're going to look at it through like a career, like job lens, because obviously I have my day job in the brewery, but the content stuff that I do is also one of my jobs. It is one of my jobs. So I'm trying to not beat myself up or be hard on myself for how I'm not getting these things done. But I am also still trying to hold myself accountable. And so this Friday, especially in the morning, the house is a little bit quieter. I am going to schedule myself to sit down and start knocking these things out for the course. I find that if I just allow myself to stay in the headspace of being upset with myself, it just pulls more and more energy from me. And I almost feel like when I do that, like I'm like subconsciously burning energy on it, and it wears me out anyways. So I'm kind of just being like, I'm trying just to be, just give myself a little bit of grace with that. But at the same time, I do need to be a little bit tighter with the time I'm getting to sleep at night and stuff like that. So I'm just trying to take care of myself, but I'm not beating myself up, but I'm also still trying to give myself a bit of a kick in the pants for this as well. But the fundamentals course is something that I am really very, very excited about. I think it's going to be the first brewing course, kind of fundamentals type course, all video, available to folks. So when I do start posting this stuff, it's actually going to drop all in one big bundle. It's all just going to be a YouTube playlist. There are some things I'm sure that I will edit and add to over the years, but your feedback on that stuff is going to be very, very important to me. So when that stuff drops, I would love you to check it out. There's a lot of things that I have planned right now for the channel. Some fun things, some educational things, some things that I think that will help grow what I'm doing here as well. But right now, it's not the season for it right now. And sometimes when I get frustrated with different circumstances, I realize afterwards that, like, looking back, that it wasn't the right time anyways. I just had that realization recently. So it was one of those situations where something happens, it hurts, you don't know why that kind of little mini bomb got dropped on you, but you know, like 6-7 months later, you end up seeing the wisdom in the plan. So yeah, that's one of the things that I'm trying to roll with as well. But that's really the main Adam Makes Beer news stuff, keeping an eye open for those fundamentals. And also thanks to folks that are specifically sharing, either, you know, whether you share it to your Instagram page or somebody else's, or when you DM somebody, the podcast stuff, always appreciated. Curtis is an assistant brewer in Tresley and Perry Sound, Ontario. Okay. I'm going to get north of the border. I mean, for me, I'm going to go north of the border at some point. I'm going to have to go on a Canadian tour. Stop by, visit all the good folks out there. So yeah, so that's news on your fundamentals course. Of course, check out AdamMakesBeer.com for all the goodies and things like that. I have some merch ideas, people. I have some merch. If there's some merch things that you want to see, drop them in the chat. I've got some concepts. I'm not much of a designer. If you can tell, like that logo in the upper whatever hand corner, the square one with just my name in it. Yeah, like clearly I'm not like a design guy, right? But you know, we do the best we can. Don't. September, are you being you're being unruly in the chat, September. Speaking of September, let's get to one of Trestle Curtis. No worries on the typo. Good seeing there, Razor. A few other familiar faces in there too. I've got a couple of questions coming up. Let me jump to Razor's question, because Razor left me a question on Instagram that I liked quite a bit, and let me see if I can pull this up real quick. Let me see if I can pull this up. Razor was asking about malt complexity, generating malt complexity. Oh, this does not want to do it as well as it should. I had some interesting feedback on the questions when I posted on Instagram today, or the other day, for this. It made me feel a little bit bad, because obviously folks are having hard times out there, man. Obviously folks are having hard times out there. There's a lot of people talking about how to get more butts in seats, you know rough work conditions, just different things, how to get into the industry, how to get out of the industry. There is a whole range of things that people were asking about. But let me try to pull this up, because it's not agreeing with me all that well. So Razor and I have chatted over the years, and he's looking to build more malt complexity. And he was saying that, he said, I'm stuck on Briess as my main base malt. I find that there's not much complexity to their base malts. I'm wanting to try something new with comparable prices, but more flavor. What is a better option with comparable prices? So, there's different options out there. I'm trying to remember off the top, is Briess a BSG or a country malt product? I think you can get, I can't remember which is which. From a comparability standpoint, you can find, Briess is obviously a great domestic maltster. Sometimes when we're going international for things, those prices can go up or down a little bit. But Razor, the lens that I would look at it with is, I remember years ago I was listening to a podcast, and the person was talking about that everything that they brew is built off of Pilsner malt. And in my mind, and this was very much when I was in like my ale era, okay, when lagers weren't as hot as they are right now and everything like that, so I'm making some English beers, and so of course I'm using English malt, and I want to, and I still want to, I want to have a nice malt complexity, a nice range of malt flavors. And I was listening to somebody that was making like these complex malty beers, and they were using Pils malt as their base, and that always struck me as interesting. And they said that it was because they just saw it as a blank canvas, right? It's a blank canvas. It's a relatively neutral flavor profile, depending on what Pils malt you're going with. And then they were talking about feathering in other malts. One of the things, if you're kind of stuck with Briess, and I used air quotes when I said that, because nothing wrong with Briess malt, that's for sure. I would look at a blending technique. And a lot of times when we think about blending, maybe we'll think about blending up like a range of dark malt, of roasted malt that we would use in a beer. But also, Kevin Templin, front of the pod in the house, he claims the flow is on point. Why, thank you, brother. I appreciate that. I hope us all is well out in beautiful Salt Lake. But I would consider blending up your base malts. And that's not something that I feel as if people talk about often enough. And one of the times that it really hit me in the face was I was making a rice lager when I was at Cartridge, and I was using Pilsner malt from Malt Europe, and then flaked rice. And then I'll be honest, one time I had an inventory issue, and the only Pils malt that I had in house was Barca Pils. And so I did Barca Pils and flaked rice. The beers were very different, and especially when you're talking about like such light beers, right? But the problem with the rice version of the Barca beer is, you know, I wanted something really neutral, and there was just too much character with that malt. But then that's when I'm like, okay, well, what if I can fold this up? So I started playing with different percentages. Now ultimately, I did just run that with a domestic Pils. But the reason that I mentioned that is this might be a good opportunity to layer up different base malts. Because remember, when we're talking about base malts, we're talking about malts that have enough enzymatic power to convert the starch that they have inside them into sugar. Okay, so there's a range. We could be talking about Pilsner malt, pale malt, pale ale malt, Vienna, Munich. Okay, there's a range of malt in that area, and of course there's going to be some others as well. But look at blending some of those things in. So sometimes it could be you're blending, you know, a 2-row and a Pils to get some character that you want, or you know, a standard 2 brewers 2-row and some Pils. Or maybe it's a little bit of Vienna. Maybe it's a little bit of Munich. And this is kind of that throwback to when I first started getting in the home brewing game. Every recipe had a little Munich in it. You know what I mean? I remember listening to, I think, an episode with a podcast episode on Brewing Network with Matt Brendelson. And he was talking about at that time how much he enjoyed folding in like maybe 5% Munich malt into some beers just to get some depth of malt character, right? I think that's an interesting way to go. You can obviously go specialty malt with that as well, Razor. But I personally like the idea of blending base malts. Now, as far as subbing things out, I would hit up some different raw material suppliers and say that you are looking for samples. And maybe if you have a homebrew rig or a pilot rig, you could do some small batches with some malt that they would just flat out give you. So that's something to remember as well. Usually they're pretty happy to provide some malt for you to play around with. So I think all of those things would be a good option, Razor. But yeah, that's kind of the direction I would go. Jay Bruce says they are country malt. So yeah, it's been a minute since I've been doing ordering. I need to dig back into some of those catalogs. But yeah, Razor, that's the direction I would take it when looking to fold, generate a little bit more complexity, or maybe get a little more oomph out of your base malt offering. All right. I appreciate the question. It's good to see you in here. Dude, hey, listen. So Mathau is he's had tremendous success of meeting folks at the meeting folks at the bar and being like, hey ladies, do you want to try my homebrew? Hey, listen, homebrewing is magnetic, dude. It's magnetic. So cheers to you. I don't know if I've seen you in here before. Good to see you in here. That was a question from Razor. Razor, thank you, buddy. Hopefully you're doing well. I did not see you. I don't think I saw you at the Ohio conference last year. Maybe the paths will cross. Maybe the paths will cross. Speaking of paths crossing, we're gonna shout out my boy September and June right now. Just so you know, September and June, this gorgeous microphone, one of the lights that's above my shoulder. He hooked me up with that stuff, man. September's a good egg, as they say. Have you guys been seeing the news of all the Scottish folk coming over and apparently just drinking all the beer in Boston? I haven't followed that too closely. I think that's interesting, though. Good for them. World Cup. How much longer do I need to pretend to be interested in soccer? I'm not a soccer guy. I think it's great. Football, I think it's great. I mean, obviously, you know, those guys run around. It's a difficult sport. I just know so little about it. I can't even contribute. And then a lot of times I feel like I run into fellow Americans that also don't know what they're talking about, but they're just kind of into it because it's what you're supposed to be into right now. So, come on. Anyway, question coming in from September in June. Hey, Adam, I will be propping 8 liters of yeast to brew 11 barrels of lager at 1060. I plan on propping with fresh 1046 to 1050 wort and waiting 2 to 3 days. What do you think? September, is this work coming off of another batch? Is that why? Is that what you were saying? Because that can affect my answer here a little bit. You said I'll be propping with only about 5 to 10 gallons. Do you think I can get away with a 2-day prop time at 70 degrees? Unfortunately, I don't think you can. The numbers that I ran on that showed that you're probably going to need some more work. You're probably going to need closer to at least 2 barrels of wort. 2 barrels of wort in order to prop that up like that. And just to walk through the concept, everybody, a really slick way to save money on yeast, especially if your processes are tight. Okay, you're from a sanitary standpoint, all that. A cool thing to be able to do is to take a beer that you're brewing that where the wort is amenable to kind of starter wort. Okay, so like a lower density wort, something maybe built to create a 4 to 5% beer, and sometimes maybe even a little lower than that. You know, people will do the prop batches sometimes quite low in density, but you can get a lab pitch, add it to a tank, and then add wort to it. Allow that over the course of a couple of days to grow, and then you can take that and you can pitch that. Okay. Sometimes people want to crash that, remove the spent wort, you know, the beer off the top of it, and just kind of go more with the slurry. There's different options there. But primarily when I have done that, I have pitched the full volume in. It's a good way of increasing your cell count. And sometimes it's a really convenient way to do that. And the reason that I say it can be convenient is the reason that it can be convenient is if you have a brew day on a Monday and you want to have that, and you want to have that crop of yeast that you want to prop up for Wednesday or Thursday, something like that, you can just cut off 2 to 3 barrels off of that beer that you're turning on Monday into a separate fermenter on that lab pitch that you have, or whatever pitch that you have. Allow that to grow, and then you can use that later. So you could do, I know people will sometimes just make a straight up DME small batch, a few barrels of DME, to a low density, low IBU, pitch it, cool it down, toss it into a tank, get some yeast on it, let it grow. That works too. But sometimes you can just cut it off of a brew day that you have going as well. It's one of the reasons why it's convenient. But yeah, so that's the concept behind kind of propping like that in brewery. And yeah, that's my take on it. September, I feel like you need a little bit more volume. Yeah, that's how I would do it. All right. We got Jamie Tripp, the great and powerful Jamie Tripp, channel all-star. And both Jamie and September and June have been longtime channel members. There is no benefit to this other than showing me some love over on YouTube. So you can be a YouTube channel member. You can click join over on the Adam Makes Beer YouTube page. It's $2.99 a month. All my content's free. It's always going to be free. If you get some value out of the stuff that I do, that's a big help. You can swing over there. But at the same time, my content is made to be free. I know we don't make a lot of money in this industry. So if you got the scratch, you do. If you don't, you don't. It's no big deal. But you can check that out. Yeah, and Razor, messing around with some malts from RAR is great too. I've had a lot of success with RAR malts as well. Yeah. Good to see everybody in here. Good to see everybody in here. This is Georgietta, GST Georgietta. They said, and this is back when we were talking about Razor's question, can we piggyback on this and ask, is there a point where too much feathering or too many varieties start to overwhelm or confuse on the palate? Yeah, man, I wouldn't do like, a little bit of this, then a little bit of that, and a little bit of this, then a little bit of that. I've never been one of those guys. I know some great brewers that are, they're a little bit of sprinkle here, a little bit of sprinkle there. I think there can be some place for that. That's not necessarily. I typically tend to have simpler builds on the recipe side. But yeah, I mean, especially with the base malt thing, I've done some beers where I've used, I think some of the maybe Oktoberfest style, or depending on what color of that kind of Oktoberfest beer type beer that you're doing. I've used blends of Pilsner, Vienna, and Munich. And that, I think you can get a little, you can get a little carried away with it. I just don't think you want to be featuring like 10 different things. And really, even just practically, like, to have a mainstay beer that you have, with 10 ingredients in it, that's just a lot of stuff to have to keep in storage and to keep organized, and it's kind of a pain. But yeah, I usually tend to keep it simple. If you're blending up base malts, just try 2 different ones and then play with your ratios. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. But yeah, I would recommend not going too hog wild with it, because I think you can get muddled. you can get muddled. I don't know if they actually are in the chat right now, but one of my all-time favorite industry people just appeared in the chat. It was she was the first person that I had ever heard pronounce the word schedule, schedule. Hope you're doing well out there, Booksy. What else? What else? Appreciate the question, Georgetta. The follow-up on that. Drop those questions, everything like that in here. So this question, and this is before I went on the pitch for the channel membership. This is from Jamie Tripp, longtime supporter. Love you, buddy. Hope you're doing well. Hey, Adam, planning a Belgian double this fall. What is the best time to add candy syrup? Beginning, middle, or whirlpool? I would be really interested in if September and June is still in the chat. I would be interested in his take on that. My hunch is the Belgian candy syrups are delicious. They smell great. They taste great. I like using them. I know sometimes people use the rock sugar and different things like that, but I do enjoy using the candy syrup. Me personally, I don't think it matters beyond the density that creates in your wort. All right, so follow me on this. When most times when I'm doing a sugar addition, whether it be dextrose, rice syrup, solids. If it's a rice syrup, why is it called rice syrup solids? Is it called rice syrup solids, or am I just dumb? I can't remember. But anything like that, blackstrap molasses or Belgian candy syrup. I usually like to add those later in the kettle. Sometimes I will even add them to the whirlpool. But the main thing is, and when I do add these things, I don't just like pouring them in all at once. I'm always fearful that I'm going to drop a big glob of either liquid sugar or formerly crystallized or something. I'm worried that's going to hit the bottom of my kettle and it's going to scorch. Okay. Maybe that's a fantasy. Who knows? Maybe that's not a thing. But in my mind, it's a concern. Okay. So sometimes that pushes me to adding it to the whirlpool. And with the whirlpool, you have the benefit of the kettle being off. If you're working with a kettle / whirlpool, a single vessel, a combination vessel right there. So you still have your hot kettle, but you don't have active steam on it. You have your circulation going. It mixes. I feel good about that. Okay. Sometimes people want to get some boil on it and they don't feel as if it has to boil the whole time. So they'll do it at 10 minutes with 10 minutes left in the boil and maybe kind of dose it up. You know what I mean? Just so you're not throwing all that dense stuff in there all at once and maybe avoiding some scorching. So there's that. But the main thing that you want to focus on is, and maybe it's not the main thing because maybe it's not a profound difference and it might depend on how much sugar you are adding. But when you punch that into your recipe calculator, it is going to more than likely, I would at least double check the bitterness that you are extracting from your hop additions will be impacted by the density of your wort. Okay. The more dense your wort is, or the higher ABV, if you're building a higher ABV beer with a higher density of that wort, it's more difficult to get IBU into solution. So your alpha acid isomerization decreases with the density of the wort as the density of the wort goes up. So the reason that I mention this, and maybe it's not a large enough percentage to really impact, but if you're going to be doing this late, if you're going to be adding these sugars late, like in the whirlpool after flame out or in the last little portion, when you look at your recipe calculator, it's going to be expecting the additional density of your sugar, and it may impact your IBU numbers of those kettle additions. So what I would do, Jamie, is I would build your recipe, and then I would cut your syrup addition down to 0 pounds or kilograms, and see what that does to your IBU numbers, because it might tick it up or down some, and because that might be a reality for that beer, and maybe it's not. Maybe it's not a big enough swing that you're even concerned about it, but maybe it is. It's just something to track, and I think it's something to be mindful of. Okay, so anytime you are adding sugar late in the kettle, you are certainly changing the density, and that can affect the isomerization of alpha acids into bitterness in your finished beer. Okay, so, or into your wort, however you want to approach it. So if you added all those things at the beginning of the boil, you would have a different density, right? Right, and that different IBU number. I appreciate the question, Jamie. But yeah, Mathau, kettle. So this does usually, I don't ask this question. You had mentioned home brewing before. In kettle sour with yogurt or buy a culture and have it shipped cold. If you're making a larger volume, I would say you can buy a culture. There's a couple of different ways to look at this, Mathau. There's pretty good options out there right now to not have to mess with a kettle sour. Okay, so whether you're talking sour Vissier, whether you're talking about Philly sour, there's probably other brands out there. There are things that can be used on the cold side that are acid producing first, and then will ferment out sugar into alcohol. You may not be able to get the level of aggressive acidity that you can get out of a lacto culture, whether that be something derived from yogurt. I know there's a thing for a while where people were using all sorts of different, like gut healthy puree drinks and stuff like that, the Good Belly stuff and whatever. But yeah, I would encourage you to give the Philly sour or the sour Vissier a try, because theoretically it's not the same as when people are saying, oh, they want to keep their clean stuff clean, and not be using wild yeast or something like a lacto. This behaves in a way, it's a clean strain. It's a clean strain, and you shouldn't have a problem with appropriate cleaning and sanitizing techniques of ridding that from your standard fermenters. I use it on the pro side, where the stakes might be a little bit higher. I have no problem using that in my fermenter. They may not have the aggressive acidity that is formed by the straight lacto pitch, but a lot of times when people are making these quick sour type beers, you're not going, usually you're blending it up with something, you're making it a specialty beer. A lot of times people are fruiting these, and other things like that. So they're kettle sour beers have basically just become a template for adjunct, right? It's a template for adjunct, and there's nothing wrong with that, but that's pretty much what it is. And so I have no problem, and maybe somebody else can freak out. I have no problem with if you taste those beers made with those, Sangiovese, Philly sour type strains, and you don't like the from a sensory standpoint, you don't like the amount of acidity you have. I don't have a problem doing small acidity adjustments with lactic acid on the backside. I do think it's important to have I do believe it's important to have acid created by the yeast strain. I think you're going to get more range of flavor with that. But yeah, I just wouldn't say let's make a blonde beer and pour a bunch of lactic acid in it. That's not what I would recommend. But yeah, I wouldn't worry about the cold shipping culture. I think there's a fair amount of dry product out there. So depending on what part of the world you're in. So I appreciate the question. I appreciate the question. Did I miss anything on the Instagram side? Hey, everybody on Instagram. Hey, everybody on YouTube. Hey, everybody on Facebook. I don't know why. Facebook does not seem... I will get 0 views on this on Facebook. I'll get a ton of views on Instagram. I'll get good views on YouTube. But I don't know why. It doesn't... I don't know. It's sometimes like a weird setting thing. Don't get me started. Anyway. We checked Razor off the list. There's a couple of fermentation related things here, or I don't know, just kind of cellar related things. But yeah, fermentation, kind of schedule-y type stuff that I wanted to talk about. And so, did I not have that written on here? Man, what is... Let's start with this. Let's talk about a lot of times people want to have questions about my fermentation schedules. And I've talked about some of that stuff before, but let's talk about the thing that ends all of my fermentation schedules. And that is the VDK test, or the diacetyl test, the forced diacetyl test. In a nutshell, what you are doing is, after a beer is at terminal density for 2 days running, so for 48 hours, it is at terminal. It is at the expected terminal gravity. Smells good, tastes good. The thing that I want to do is, because I want to be able to get that beer cold, but before I do, I need to make sure that I do not have diacetyl remaining in that beer. And I don't know all about all of you. My nose for diacetyl, I think, is solid. I don't think it's elite, and that's not a character flaw. There's certain things that are different people perceive more readily at different levels, right? But I've got a decent nose for diacetyl. My buddy Bill is like a bloodhound for the stuff. So you want to make sure that you do not have diacetyl in that beer. And when you pull a sample off of the tank and you swirl around and you smell it just at ambient, you might not smell it, but it doesn't mean that it isn't there. So what you want to do is you want to run a diacetyl test, a VDK test. And what I'm going to point you to is imperialyeast.com under resources and document library. I love their description of the VDK test here. VDK/diacetyl it's a normal part of yeast metabolism, and that's often perceived as butter popcorn, butterscotch. Okay. There's a lot of things that can affect it, but functionally, this is what we have going on. what I want to do is, and when I was at Cartridge, I think there's a video of this, and there are some things on this process that I would probably polish up a little bit if you've seen this on some of the old videos. But I would take a Nalgene bottle, like a 1 liter, or maybe it's a 2 liter, 1 liter Nalgene bottle, 1 liter, 1 liter Nalgene bottle, and I would draw a sample off of the fermenter. And then I would, the key is whatever vessel that you're doing, you have to be able to heat, and it has to be able to be sealed. Okay. So my screw on top on the Nalgene, and then I would put that into a little container. And then I would take a little hose, just like a little nylon flexi hose, and I would hang it off of my hot liquor tank, and I would fill up that container that the beer sample is sitting in, and then I would trim it back and just kind of let it consistently overflow. Like, I'm not just dumping barrels down, but I'm turning the water over. That's why I want it to flow, because I want to maintain that temperature. And the goal is you want to be able to get that sample, that incubated sample, up to 150 degrees F. I do not have that off the top of my head for C for all of our international people. So my apologies. But you want that to get up to 150 F and hold that temperature for 15 minutes. Now, typically what I would do back then is once I hit that temperature and I hit that time, I would take it out, I would open it up, and I would sniff, and then I would cover it back up, because what you're doing is you're pushing these volatiles into the headspace. So that's one of the other things. The vessel that I used, I always like to have a vessel that I could have some headspace with, because that's going to give me an area with which those aromatics can build up. Okay. And then I would pass it to Josh, Maggie, and we would all take our little VDK head off of it, and we would see where we were at. What raising that temperature does is it allows the diacetyl, if it is present, to be more apparent. Now, something that I have seen since then is Imperial and other sources recommend also cooling that sample back down. Now, I am not certain the full-on reason for that. I will say, when you smell that hot beer, I feel like there's a lot of things coming at you at once. And now that I am at 50 West, they use the heat up method and then the cool back down. I feel, and again, sealed container the whole time. When I smell those cooled samples, they seem like less messy to me than when I was smelling the hot samples before. Smelling the hot sample has worked for me in the past, but it might be a cleaner method to actually cool it back down. So what they're using is they're using like little mini canning jars, and they're probably, maybe they're like 6-ounce like jam jars. They just like these little canning jars, and they have a plastic lid that screws onto them, so they can take the temperature swing. So the nice thing about the smaller container is it's going to shorten the window, both for your heat up and for your cool down. So I like that better than the Nalgene bottle that I used to use. What else? But yeah, this is a really key point, because if you heat your sample up in a sealed container, smell it, you have diacetyl. You need to wait for that diacetyl to clear up, because if you knock down the temperature of that tank for your crash, whether it be you crashing all the way down to 32 or 0, or you're doing a stepped crash, a slower crash, you're going to have diacetyl in that beer. The only hope of that diacetyl being reabsorbed is the yeast that is in solution getting back after it, right? You do have options. When it comes to things like, so sometimes people are like, well, I'll just throw some more slurry in it, or I will hit it with some dry yeast. More often than not, you're going to need to krausen it. You're going to need to hit it with actively fermenting beer of a similar ilk. Okay. That's more than likely what you're going to need. If you're just sitting on a diacetyl bomb and there's nothing else that you can do, like that you know, it's been sitting warm and it's not doing its thing, you're probably actually going to have to krausen that to have any chance of dropping that diacetyl off of it. Slow Motion said, I honestly use ALDC with every beer that I make homebrew. I understand at scale this can be costly, but at my scale it works well. And honestly, man, I mean, even on the larger scale, ALDC is not that expensive. You know, it is a nice, you know, there's nothing wrong with using ALDC. I think it can be a really useful tool. I think it can be a really useful tool. So yeah, that's an option as well. So that VDK test is always the last thing that I do. I'm at terminal for 2 days, and then I run my VDK. I pass. I can start my crashing process. Okay. But what happens if you have a situation where you have had a sluggish fermentation for one reason or another? So let's throw a wrinkle into this scenario, and let's talk about dealing with diacetyl when you have a dry hop that is coming up. Okay. So I have had the scenario before where, have you ever had a solenoid fail, ladies and gentlemen? I have. And you get like that overnight soft crash. Like maybe the solenoid didn't completely fail or whatever, but it's pissing a little bit of glycol through that valve. And so maybe you are at like, you know, 68F or like 20C, and then it dropped you down to like 55F overnight, and it hurt your feelings. Is that like 12C or 13C? I'm guessing here, folks. Trying to make the international community happy. You know what I mean? I'm a servant of the people. So you have that mini crash overnight. And thankfully, the super majority of fermentation had already happened at that point. But the first thing I think is when I have a fermentation that gets prematurely chilled, I think to myself, okay, where is my density at? How much fermentation do I have left? You know, is there still like activity? So I am tracking density throughout that day. Obviously, I turn the jacket off. I don't do anything aggressive like trying to crazy heat it up, like by running it through a heat exchanger and feeding hot liquor tank water through the other side of it, or just warm water through the other side of the heat exchanger. I think that's a really aggressive thing to do. And there's a lot of issues that I would have on an oxidation from an oxidation side, because I've had people ask me that before. I really wouldn't recommend that. I did have to shut the glycol off to that fermenter. Thankfully, it was warm and it started to creep up in temperature again. But, and that's a big but, ladies and gentlemen, I did have a kind of pervasive diacetyl issue that sprung up. This was with a London 3 type variant, you know what I mean? And that strain can kick diacetyl. And so how do I approach the dry hop for this beer when there is diacetyl present? Some might say, well, you're going to go through hop creep anyways, hit it with that dry hop and let it rip. Maybe you're right. How I approached it was I waited until the presence of diacetyl was not perceivable by me before dry hopping it. So the beer did go back up to ambient 6820C. And we let it stay there for longer than it normally needs to be clean, for that diacetyl to clear up. My concern would be is if there is hop creep, and if you listen to interviews with Jessica Young or read her research, she will say that there is inevitably going to be hop creep with your dry hop beers. A lot of times that hop creep comes into play, or the diacetyl end of the hop creep comes into play when you do not have enough healthy yeast cells to handle the re-fermentation that happens during hop creep. And so diacetyl will be produced. There's not enough healthy yeast in solution to reduce that or to reconsume that diacetyl. And then you're just sitting there with a butter sandwich. Butter on the bottom, butter on top, hops in the middle. You don't want it. Okay. So that's what I would do. I would wait until that diacetyl is the diacetyl is formed during a standard fermentation or a weird fermentation because we had an equipment issue. I would handle it like that, and then I would dry hop that afterwards. Okay. And folks, I would also recommend doing diacetyl test after you dry hop. Okay. I think that's because I know sometimes people are dry hopping cold. I've dry hop cold. Some people are dry hopping warm post fermentation. Some people are getting just the tail end of fermentation, right? But I would be looking to get a diacetyl test in post dry hop, especially if you're doing that on the warm side, because it's right there. Do you think? Right. Yes. If you're just joining us, I see some different people popping into the chat. Good to see y'all in here. This is the Adam Makes Beer AMA. Ask Me Anything podcast. How's it going? How you living? I told a coworker today that game recognized game. I think I've been watching too many Wire shorts. But yeah, you can't fault me. I'm using ALDC for the first time on 15 gallons. I'm assuming that's what you're saying, a 15 gallon. Yeah, any advice? Just use that. Hey, Andrew, Channel All-Star. Thank you, brother. Good to see you in here. I am using ALDC for the first time on a 15-gallon batch. Any advice? Yeah, just I would recommend it's going to be a small amount that you're using. I would look at getting, sometimes they have these little sanitary-ish plastic syringes that are pre-measured out well for that. Throw that stuff in Sani, make sure it's clean. Throw it in some Sani, take it out, get it dry, and then you can draw your ALDC measurement up into that, and then add that to your fermenter as you're filling, so it gets a good chance to mix. And yeah, my nose is itching, folks. My nose is itching. I feel like I might have to sneeze. I'm gonna make sure there's a tissue they're ready. Nobody wants to see this. This is the problem with the video podcast, people. All right, I'm gonna try to do a quick nose blow. Hold on. I thought I muted it, but I didn't. So you just got to hear my nose blow. And then I muted myself. So brewing with the paramedics, so the syringe shouldn't be a problem. Yeah, dude. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I would measure it out like that. Yeah, I think it's a cool product. What are you making with it? Are you thinking like on the lager side, or is it a dry hop beer where you're trying to prevent some diacetyl? Tell me what you got going on there, brother. But yeah, that's my take on dealing with diacetyl and an upcoming dry hop. Indeed. Let's see. I had Dry hop with Lupomax. Yeah, baby. Get in there. Sounds good, dude. Let me know how it turns out. I mean, I'm sure it'll be a little bit. But yeah, on one of the upcoming streams, let me know how that beer turns out. I'm interested. I like hearing good things. Welcome to everybody in the chat. Drop those questions if you got them. Slow Motion asked the question, when do you check your pH to make sure it matches your suggested recipe milestones? Slow Motion, this is when I measure pH. I get a mash pH. I take a pH reading of my final runnings. I take a pH of my kettle full. I take a pH reading of the end of boil as well. And then I take, and then I would get kettle full, or I'm not kettle full. I would get a fermenter sample, and then I would definitely be getting a final pH, pre-carbonation, filtered through like a coffee filter or something like that. Yeah. That's what I would do. That's what I like to do. I would also like to mess around and kind of do like little ladders, just little sensory ladders. Me and the old Josh and Maggie together, and take a lager that's at 4.3 and just titrate with lactic down to 4.2, 4.1, 4.39, 3.8, and just taste them. Kind of get a sense for what that does, right? Build out that tool belt, that sensory tool belt that you got. You know what I mean? Know what I mean? All right. That's what I would do with it. Next one. I found this is like a tools episode. Okay. Or tools or resources episode, because there's a few things that I liked on here. Here's a tool that I'd like to put you on game here, ladies and gentlemen. And maybe this isn't a fix for everything for you, but I think it is. I think it's a cool resource, and it's also a resource that is very much close to my heart. For those of you that may not know my origin story, I started homebrewing in the early 2000s, and I was lucky because I had a big commute for work, and then I had these. I got turned on to the Brewing Network podcast somehow. I don't remember how I found it. It was probably just I probably asked Jeeves, and found this great podcast, and I would just listen to hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of this stuff. And one of my favorite podcasts on there was Brewing with Style, which we all called the Jamil Show, and Jamil Zainasheff, author of. It was funny when I was talking to Kevin Templin and a few other people, they're like, "Oh, you mean this book?" Yeah, it's funny how many pros have that book and use it as a reference from time to time. But I mean, Jamil has probably influenced me as a brewer more than anybody else. Like, just from like the majority of my nuts and bolts stuff that I know about brewing, and so in a lot of ways, like the spirit with which I brew is very much informed by him. I listen to that podcast. I listen to it on repeat. I tried to build myself as a brewer after the way he viewed things, not just from a technical standpoint, because he was all about yeast health, appropriate pitching rates, uh, cleanliness, being sanitary, um, yeast management, temperature control, avoiding oxygen exposure, like all the fundamentals. Like he was crushing. And I mean that's the heart and soul of what you hear me talk about, you know, when I'm doing these things. And back in the day, he used to have a yeast calculator, and it was mrmalty.com. Because I think he was a Quaff guy. Shout out Quaff out there in California, and that homebrew club. And I think maybe he was called like Mr. Malty or something like that, because he always liked that that mash temperature, you know, like little 154. You know what I mean? Little bit more beef, pushing that malt profile a little bit more with a little bit more residual sweetness, maybe. And so yeah, it's mrmalty.com, and he used to have a yeast pitching calculator on there and a couple other tools. But I just saw the other day that I don't know if he relaunched the website, but there is a range of things that he has here, which I think is really cool. So if you go to mrmalty.com, he has references for beer style. He has a beer style finder. He has a reference. What did I brew? He said the style finder run backwards. Describe what you taste, smell, and see in a finished beer and find. Okay. Oh, I see. So you can input some things there. Score sheet troubleshooter, recipe scaler, which I think is really interesting. A calculator for dilution and blending. Okay, very cool stuff there. Malt and grain substitutions, fining selector. So tell the calculator thingy what you're brewing, what's clouding the beer, and it can help figure out a plan for you for that. I think that's cool. A dextrose dosing calculator, beer color corrector, hop substitution, whirlpool, and IBU calculator. I think that's awesome, because that is one of the difficult things. And maybe that was just like a pro mash thing. I don't know. I mean, I'm dating myself, but yeah. Knowing the difference between those things. He has a strike water and step infusion calculator, decoction mash calculator, water adjustment calculator, yeast pitching rate, commercial pitch rate equivalents, a repitch ladder planner, zinc addition calculator. There are tons of things in here. And the nice thing is that there are calculators and references in here that work both for homebrew and for pro brewing. I feel like I'm going to sneeze again, you guys. Hold on just 1 second, please. And we're back. Yeah, Andrew misses pro mash sometimes, dude. I do too, man. Sometimes we miss those toxic relationships. You know what I mean? That's a joke. That's a joke. We all use pro mash, and it was awesome. 2 mils per gallon for White Labs ALDC. That sure seems like a lot. Dude, I don't know. I mean, if that's what the spec sheet says, I would listen to it. 2 mils per gallon. I mean, that's way more than I need to use for something like Brewers Clerics, but they're fundamentally different things. Yeah, I would just double check your spec sheet on it and then run with it from there. But yeah. Old Nickel, tuning in late in case you already mentioned it. Did you make it to HomebrewCon? No, man. And Channel All Star, also Old Nickel. I did not make it to HomebrewCon. I'm wondering. I think I might at some point in the future. I think that might be fun. I'm glad that they're doing one again, because I don't think they were doing one for a little while. I didn't do it, but work constraints and everything like that. Life is pretty busy right now, but it would be fun to do. It would be fun to do. So yeah, check out mrmalty.com for a cool range of calculators. Maybe you have sources for some of these things and you're comfortable or whatever, but there's some good free resources. Jamil is a smart guy, and I love, I don't know, his stuff was formative for me, or really formative for me. So he'll always have Mr. Malty will always have a soft spot in my heart. Is that how that phrase goes? I'm trying to remember things. Good to see everybody in the chat. Look at everybody in there. What else? What else? Okay, let's dig in. I had a few people ask questions about dropping pH levels. So let's take a look at this. Wow, there's a lot of feedback on this, you guys. This is really great. Okay, so DK17 said an issue that he's having is a big pH drop in light lager fermentation to 3.7. T. Jenkins says that we have the same issue. Our Mexican lager yeast consistently gets down to about 3.9 and no one can figure out why. So I think this is interesting. So first of all, just off the top, don't let a pH number freak you out. Okay. There are times I have had beers that go down to 3.9 and they don't taste sour. There's not a problem. They're clean. They're tasty. It's just what the process of the brewery that we're in takes that beer to. And it's not like, oh, the beer is sour, I'm not tasting it. It's consistent. The beers are clean. We were having them tested. So like I actually have the data to back that up, not just my palate. So sometimes that pH will push lower. And I know sometimes when we see that pH being lower, the first thing is to panic a little bit. And I get that, but just take a breath and do standard sensory on it. And don't be too freaked out. But I will give you 3.7 is quite low. We took the conversation to the DMs with both of those folks. And, you know, we had a little bit of back and forth. It does seem as if, and the situations might be different for the different people. But, you know, one was saying that the issue seems to get worse over time with repitching. One was saying that it just stays consistently low, even with the first pitch. So that's my first thing. Don't freak out about the number. But yeah, I freak out about the sensory. if the sensory is an issue, if there's some funkiness in there, then clearly that's an issue. In a situation like that, I think the first thing that you want to do, and it was maybe even voiced in one of the DMs that we went back and forth with, was the raw material supplier, yeast supplier, was suggesting an infection that might push that pH that low. You know, very probably something, you know, it could be something on the lactose side, just anything that'll push that acid down a little bit. Very real possibility. What I would look at is, and I don't know if where everybody is at financially, but if I'm trying to chase something down, and maybe this is just happening in one beer style, but if it's happening a little bit more across the board, of course you want to be double checking your CIP and sanitizing practices. Heat exchangers can be very difficult. That's why I do like to run a clean that is both forwards and backwards on those. Get very good rinses, and I love to heat sanitize them. Okay. I love to heat sanitize my wort knockout line, my heat exchanger, my wort knockout line. So yeah, that's something that I would be looking at if we are looking at it through that lens of trying to track something down like that, because it doesn't seem to be happening. It doesn't seem to be happening with some other strains, and then it seems to maybe increase in time over a little bit. That's all a possibility. If you do want to, if you feel really good about those practices, I would look at switching up the strain to another yeast provider, seeing if you get the exact same thing out of it. So yeah, I don't know. That's the way I would look at it. And I'll also say this: one of my areas for mystery contamination is post heat-X at the O2 stone. I think that O2 stone really gets slept on as far as getting chemical through it, rinsing it appropriately, and then getting sanitizer appropriately through it, or flow appropriately through it. And even that line going back to the O2 tank, I've seen it get nasty. Okay. So I personally am a fan of having my connection not at the stone itself, but up toward the O2 tank. I've done triclover to triclover, barb to barb, like that, connect right there. So that way I can actually, as I'm doing my CIP on that on the heat exchanger portion, I can open up that portion of the stone and I can at least get some chemical flowing all the way through 95% of the O2 line that I'm using. And also I can get my sanitizer through there. I can get my heat through there. So those are some things that I like to do when tracking down things like that. One quick note. That's how I would look at those pH drops, man. One, not freak out unless there is an actual sensorial issue. Sensorial is not a word, but yeah. And then you gotta start tracking it down on that side. Flip side is I would try out a different yeast strain, or same yeast strain, different provider, and see what happens there, or something similar. One dropper full for 5 gallon. Okay. Yeah. Don't trust that. Yeah, always double check. Yeah, do raw material. Yeah, and listen, and I'm not like an AI is the devil guy. Like, listen, it might end up killing us all. But I also think that it's inevitable at this point. So, yeah, whenever you're using a product like an ALDC, an enzyme, whatever, make sure you're actually pulling the spec sheets from the raw material supplier, because people have different dosing rates sometimes, stuff like that. So yeah, it's a good thing you double check, Andrew. Absolutely. Let's jump into maybe what will be the last thing here. Let's see. So we had some stuff today talking about like the tail end of ferment, just before you're getting ready to crash. Let's look at some of that late game fermentation stuff, and let's look at a guide from Berkeley Yeast. And this is, pardon me on the yawn. This is from the Berkeley Yeast website. I have some videos where I talk about harvesting, and they have some things in here that I don't do, or I haven't done, and I don't have included in those videos. And I think that it's interesting. So I think most of us are in a situation where we don't have microscopes, We don't have a lot of different things, but maybe we have a brink and we have a scale, and we can at least weigh our slurries. So let's talk about harvesting and yeast harvesting. And we're going to kind of look through a low tech lens. So we're just going to say that we have a vessel we can harvest into. We can weigh it. All right. Maybe we don't have a scope, but maybe there's some things that we can do to reduce our solids, so we know that we're getting good quality yeast in there, or at least low solids yeast, right? So not a bunch of protein, true, whatnot. So typically what I would do is, when I was in this low tech situation, I would just create standards. Okay. So what I would do is I would get a beer that was, whether this is ale or lager, I would get a beer past VDK, past my dry hop. So everything on the warm side, that's going to happen is done, and I'm ready to be able to start crashing that beer. What I would always do is I would always do some measure of a soft crash. So if I have an ale strain and I let it, raise in temperature a little bit, like up into the high 60s or low 70s F, I would do a soft crash down to between 55 and 60 degrees. Okay. There'd be pressure on the tank. At that point, the tank would be bunged. I wouldn't want to be, decreasing the size of that liquid by cooling it and potentially drawing, your blow off bucket in or whatever, you know what I mean? Or trying to, maybe drawing ambient air in, something like that, by drying out your airlock. And then I would give that soft crash. I would give it 2 days, and then I would harvest. Okay. But it was the same thing every time, because I wanted repeatability in my process. When I don't have technology, I need to have a repeatable, consistent process, just so I can judge the results that I'm getting. Okay. So it was always soft crash for 2 days, harvest. Now, let's talk about something that I would implement along the way. I am a big believer in a trube dump / cone shave. So once fermentation is actively happening, gently blowing off the bottom of that cone to get the dead cells in trube that have settled, that are not doing anything for your beer. This is a way that you can reduce solids on your harvest. Okay. There may be some other benefits in there as well, but that's a way to get your less solids into that yeast crop. You can also say, well, Adam, I could just blow that bottom off before I harvest. You can do that, absolutely. But I'd like to get some of that out earlier in the process anyways. And when I've done that, I've also seen that I have gotten cleaner pitches from a solid standpoint. And this is also verified by the great and powerful Vinny Chilurzo, because Vinny was talking about using this technique when they were struggling with having too many solids in their yeast harvest. Okay. So if it's good enough for Vinny, it's good enough for me. And bro, it's probably good enough for you too. Okay. So Vinny, hope you're doing well. I don't think you know who I am, but I love you. So that's what I would do. I would make sure that I'm doing that cone shave, that trube dump, and then I'm going to harvest gently off the bottom of that fermenter into a cleaned and sanitized brink. I don't go cone to cone. I don't go raw. I don't go cone to cone. I don't want to open up the fermenter and look in and see how much yeast is in there. I want to be able to measure out of a brink. I want to be able to weigh out of a brink. And then a lot of times I would just leave that in that brink, and then I would build out my wort line to blow right into that brink and then on into the fermenter that I'm filling. But that's just how I roll. You can see that in some of the brew day stuff that I was doing back at Cartridge. So if you're loving that, Ashley, Michael, I love you. If you're still in here, yeah, I do love you. I miss you. What else? That's my cousin. I'm not just shouting out random women and professing my love. Okay, so get a grip. Okay, get a grip. That's how I would do that. When you go to this Berkeley, this Berkeley tutorial, though, I thought it was really interesting. They mentioned two options. It talks about fermentation, blah blah blah, and it gets to the settle portion. Two options: one, the pressure method; two, the soft crash method. I talked about the soft crash method, but they have some wrinkles in here, people. Check this out. Let's talk the pressure method first. They said cap the fermenter at 1 to 2 Plato before terminal gravity. Let pressure increase naturally as the yeast consumes the remaining sugar. Once the gravity is stabilized, increase the pressure to 8 psi by adding CO2 through the racking arm positioned upward. Allow the yeast to settle into the cone for 12 to 24 hours. Interesting. Now, here's what they say for soft crash method. Once fermentation has subsided around 3 to 5 days, set the fermenter temperature to 57 to 60 F. When the target temperature is reached, add CO2 through the racking arm to increase the pressure to 8 psi. Immediately release the pressure with a quick burst by opening the valve connected to the blow-off. This will help break apart any top cropped yeast. What? That's interesting to me. I've not done that before. I've not included a CO2 blast through my racking arm in order to get additional yeast to drop out of that krausen. That's interesting to me. I've not done it, but I would probably add it to my game. Hey, Ash. I didn't know if you were still in here or not. I'm talking beer stuff. It's probably boring. It's all right. Ashley, the other day, my daughter was laying on the deck with some little plastic sunglasses on like this little pool lounger, and it flashed me back to us as kids at the shore. I love you so much. Beer stuff now. But yeah, knocking that yeast out of anything that might be at the top, because again, that stuff that comes up into the krausen is hanging out at the top of the fermenter is oftentimes some primo yeast, ladies and gentlemen. Primo yeast. Not all yeasts are going to be, not all flocks are going to be congregating in the krausen, all that stuff. But especially for those haze boys, they love sticking up there. So I thought that was an interesting wrinkle, and then waiting 24 hours for the yeast to settle into the bottom of the cone. They continue with the harvest itself. To prevent channeling, harvest yeast through a narrow diameter, 0.75 inch to 1 inch sight glass and butterfly valve. Verify yeast viability. That's all good, but we're kind of talking about if you do not, have the tools, do it if you can. And then it says pitch yeast directly into another tank or store it in a brink for later use. Keep the yeast cold, 32 to 40 degrees F, if not pitched immediately. I don't like to store yeast in a brink. I don't like the pressure building up on it. They say your yeast will be healthiest if stored below 2 psi. If you have to, you have to. But I start to get sketched out by that. Okay. And certain strains, the viability can really crash. Okay. So you're really going to want to keep a close eye on that. And a cell counting tip, and this is an interesting one. London-based strains tend to clump together, making counting difficult. So if you were going to be doing cell counting this, to disperse cells for accurate counts, conduct dilutions in a 0.25 EDTA solution. Well, you can do that. Am I gonna have to Google that? Yes. All right. So cool resource from Berkeley Yeast, kind of walking through that harvesting process. I like that. It opened up my mind. It opened up my mind's eye to something that I had not considered before. So yeah. Let me see here. I gotta go back to my list. All right, I'm going to hit on one last thing. And at the top of the show, I had talked about, if you have any questions, drop them, everything like that. But this is going to be the last one that I have planned. So if you have anything, drop it. It's been busy. It's been busy at work. And the folks in the brewery have been working hard for a long time. Staffing has been a little bit lean, and it can be stressful. And I'm in a position where I'm in a leadership position, and one of the things that I am responsible for doing is, and one of the things I'm really passionate about, is trying to help people grow and develop their skill sets. And just, making work someplace worth being for them, someplace where they feel valued, appreciated, and given opportunities to grow. Right? That's really what you can hope for from something like that, especially when we all choose to be in this industry. We know we don't make enough money, but we know that when we get in, nobody is thinking they're going to get rich from doing this. But when you are in that really busy, crazy time of year, it can be really hard to grow. It can be really hard to evaluate. Sure, you can evaluate like how somebody handles high stress, and a little bit of chaos and everything like that, right? You can evaluate all those things. But it can be a challenge to show who you are to the folks that manage you, who you are to the folks that you are managing, maybe. And it can be difficult for staff to show what they're bringing to the table. Now I will say that one of the things I really try to focus on, especially when things are high stress at work, is I really like to be consistent. I think consistency is one of the things that I try the hardest to bring. From an emotional standpoint, from an interpersonal standpoint, I try to be the same guy every time I walk through the door. That's going to vary. But I would rather it be little ebbs and flows rather than big spikes and valleys. I think people want to know who to expect to be working with that day, right? I believe very much in that. That's nice, right? It's good to know who you're going to be working with that day from an emotional standpoint. And I'm somebody that feels things strongly, and things can really weigh on me. I'm somebody that can lose sleep. I'm somebody that can have nightmares. I'm somebody that can wake up with a sore jaw because I've been, clenching my teeth in my sleep. Stress hits me. You know what I mean? But as I said, it can be difficult to feel like you can grow when you are in the middle of that situation. But I will also say that when you approach high stress situations in the right way, they can be the fertile soil for growth. A lot of times for me, I need to zoom out on a situation. When I'm in it, it's kind of too intense, right? But when I zoom out, I can realize that whatever I'm going through is temporary, that we're going to get into a slower season. We're going to be able to attack some of the things that I can't attack right now, stuff like that. But taking heart in the fact that sometimes when things are crazy, that is when you can get sharper. Iron sharpens iron. Is that true? Or is it steel sharpens steel? I think iron sharpens iron. I think that's what it is. And I'm not trying to like talk like one of those like one of those weird like influencer dudes. Like one of my favorite all time. It's like there's like those bros that are like, it's like all like the work grind stuff. And he's like, this is why I'm so much more productive than you. I work 8 hours. What did he say? I get 8 hours worth of work done in 6 hours. All right. Or 4 hours or something crazy. And then it's like, so I've already worked 8 hours between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. And then between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., that's a whole nother day of work. And then 2 p.m. to 6 p.m., I got 3 days of work in. And that's just like nonsense, crazy stuff. But I do think that there is something to know about. Yeah, sometimes when it is hard, when it is stressful, it can take a toll. It can be difficult, and sometimes it can be too much. And sometimes maybe a situation isn't a fit for you. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not just talking about tough it out. It's going to get better. You're going to be stronger. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is sometimes strength and resilience can be found through situations like that. For me, I find that happens when I feel as if I'm always having such a difficult time trusting that there's a plan. And then every time I look back at a situation 6 months later, I'm like, man, I just needed to be more patient. Anyways, I talk on that stuff a little bit because there was a lot of hurt and maybe there were some jokes in that post that I had on Instagram where people were giving some feedback. I know it's hard times out there right now, everybody. I myself was out of a job for 18 months. You know, I mean, I know what it's like. I know what it's like when you look at job posting. There's not a lot out there. It's rough right now. But as always, I mean, my whole thing is always do this job. It's a passion job, right? So if it's a job and not a business you own, my advice is do your best, give it an honest effort, do it as long as you're loving it, doing as long as you can still pay the bills, do it as long as it doesn't interfere with your real life, which is life outside of work. If it's not doing those things for you anymore, do something else. If it's killing you, do something else. That stuff's not worth it. We do this because we love it. And if you're outside of that space anymore, it's not a good fit for you, step away. If you're on the ownership side, it can be hard, man. I don't know. There's a million levers to pull. A lot of times the financial side is the toughest side. Yeah, I don't know. People are talking about having a hard time getting people in the door. And maybe it's a too late thing or whatever. I always think you want to be the place where people want to be there because it feels so damn good to be there. I think in one way that can be a quality product, sure. It can also be killer service. Having service staff that really knows how to connect with people. Having an interesting place to be. So the ambiance, the space that you're in, right? The food, all that stuff. It's not just one thing. It's not just one thing. But I think people, the feel people have for your place comes from your people. So it's not you, it's the people that represent you. And yeah, if you're having a hard time right now, my heart goes out to you. We've all been there on one level, in one layer or another, whether you've been out of work, you've got a business that's in a tough spot. I've been in all those spots. So anyways, it's so good to see all of you in the chat. Thank you for everybody that has signed up to be a member over on the YouTube channel. Always appreciate you sharing my stuff out there, especially the educational stuff when it pops up. We are going to be having the fundamentals course coming out before I'm 49 years old. So I've got an early August date for that. That's what I'm shooting for. As always, drop questions, comments, anything that you want to tell me in those DMs. It's always good to see those. Yeah, I'll be back next week. There's a couple of things I'm cooking up. So I'll announce that when everything is locked and loaded. But so good to see you all in here. Love to you all. Be good to your people, and we will see you next time. Cheers, everybody.
Adam make beer. He's up in the club. Adam make beer. All the time he's sipping bub. Adam make beer. Stacking paper, make it rain. Adam make beer. Get a ticket for this train. Adam make beer. Adam make beer. Adam make beer.